Sit down, sit down, sit down. All right. Hola, good to be down in Miami again. We're happy to be joined by our great Attorney General, our great Lieutenant Governor. We also have Dr. Jerry Haig, CEO of One More Child, Jack Brewer, founder of the Jack Brewer Foundation, Max Alvarez, president of Sunshine Gas, Carmen Valdivia, Executive Director, American Museum of Cuban Diaspora, and Senior Pastor Frank Lopez from Iglesia Doral Jesus Worship Center. So I want to thank everybody for coming. We're discussing today and really getting great perspective on the disastrous border policies of the Biden administration, and then Florida's position that we don't want to be facilitating, which are very harmful policies, not only in terms of the rule of law, not only in terms of what drug cartels may be introducing into our country, but also the treatment of people who are basically being trafficked as part of what is effectively the largest human smuggling operation in American history, illegal operation. And so, our perspective is that those are bad policies. If you look at just the absolute explosion of illegal migrants across the southern border, it's unlike anything we've ever seen. Just go back to 2020, it was a much different situation. And we in the state of Florida actually sent support last summer to help Texas and to help interdict. The problem is, you interdict and then you give them to the feds, and then the feds will do things like fly people in the middle of the night at 2 in the morning and drop them off. They will provide, bus, all this other stuff, and then put into different communities. There's no papers, no one knows who the hell a lot of these people are, so it's chaos. But the thing that really stuck out to me were two things. One, I think most people understand this is not like Mexicans coming across by and large. These are people from all over the world. I mean, when we were there, we saw people from Africa, the Middle East, South America, you name it. The APB has basically gone out to say, why would you want to go through 3 years of an immigration process? It takes us years to vet. So like if we want to bring a doctor in from like Nigeria, it takes like 3 years or maybe even more. Why would you want to go through that? Just come across the border illegally and you're basically home free. And so just the total breadth of people that were coming from so many different places around the world. I mean, there's actually countries that are closer to Florida or closer to the U.S., but they're going all the way through this roundabout. The other thing that really stuck out was when our folks were interdicting people, they would be asked, where would you like to go? And a lot of them said Florida. Now, I mean, that's true. I mean, like you look at where people from failed states in the United States want to go, they want to come to Florida. And I guess people that are fleeing, bad places, not that they're anything that, and we'll talk a little bit more about Pedro Pan and the communists and everything. I mean, they're not qualified as refugees because they just want to be in America for whatever reason. But it was a huge amount. So people, when we sent the folks to help, they were like, well, this is a Texas problem. This is a border. What does that have to do with Florida? It does have to do with Florida, unfortunately. I wish it had nothing to do, but it does. And so that was what we were able to do. Now, we have some folks here who are going to discuss some of the stuff. I just think, there's a lot of bad analogies that get made in modern political discourse, but to equate what's going on with the southern border, with mass trafficking of humans, illegal entry, drugs, all this other stuff, with Operation Pedro Pan, quite frankly, is disgusting. It's wrong. It is not even close to the same thing. We had people that were coming because they were fleeing a communist dictatorship that was persecuting them. Those are not illegal immigrants. These are people that were sanctioned to come by the United States government. And I've talked with Max Alvarez, some of these other people, and said, if Cuba was free in the 1960s, we would have never accepted communist refugees into this country. We were doing it because it was the right thing to do, but it was also consistent with our national interest in fighting communism. And the same reason, and we had a lot of, obviously, involvement in Cuba over the years, same reason why people fleeing the communist regime in Vietnam welcomed into the United States. We had, of course, a lot of involvement there. And so to equate those things with what we're seeing there is just frankly wrong. And it's not something that I think most people that have any sense of what's going on would think that that's something that's good. If you look at the amount of people, you'll hear things about unaccompanied alien children, and that's different than refugees, people that qualify as refugees. These are basically illegal entrants. It's important to point out, though, when they talk about, quote, children, most of these people are what would be considered in most parts of the world military-age males, 15 to 17. I mean, that's who's typically coming across. I think it's CBS News reported 75% of everybody, I think in 2021, was 15 to 17, and the overwhelming majority of those were males. So that's what it is. So I think it's sometimes portrayed as like, these are like, like some baby dropped over the border or something like that. That's just not what's happening. But regardless of that, it is not a good policy to want to incentivize unaccompanied minors to be taking these types of voyages, because there's a huge problem with what human smugglers are doing, human traffickers, sex traffickers, drug cartels, and I can tell you, this is the golden age for the cartels since Biden became president. I mean, they are eating our lunch every single day with what's going on down there. And the sheer increase in what you're seeing is really unbelievable. So just in 2021, I mean, you're looking at about 2 million people coming illegally across the southern border, and really they're not showing any inclination to want to change their policies in a really radical direction. If you look at the amount of fentanyl, and I know Ashley will probably want to talk about this, there's been a fentanyl come across the border. There's been enough to kill like 275 million Americans. And if you look, in 2021, fentanyl was the leading cause of death for Americans between the age of 18 and 45. And so those policies are poisoning this country. You also look at the methamphetamines that are coming across the border. There used to be a lot of that produced in the United States. Not as much anymore. Most of it is coming across the southern border. And so, you deal with that here in South Florida, but I can tell you, you go to other parts of Florida, the percentage of folks who get involved, unfortunately, in meth is way, way too high, particularly in some of our rural counties. That's the #1 scourge that they're fighting. So that's coming across the border in record time. And so, our view is, and then I also think about, if these policies are so great, why are you hiding them at 2 o'clock in the morning? How come you're not being honest? Why aren't you giving the state a heads up about who you're bringing in to the state? How come you're not blaring this from the rafters so that everybody knows how great you're doing? And I think it's because people understand that what's being done is a violation of federal law. Clearly, from a policy perspective, it's having hugely negative consequences, but it's also a failure of the president to fulfill his constitutional oath that the laws be faithfully executed. He is not taking care to do so, and the result is what we're seeing. But I also think to myself, Florida has been very clear. We're not a sanctuary state for illegal immigration. We've made that clear in our laws. We made that clear in our policies. You have other states who have done differently. California, New York, some of those places. And yet they're sending more illegal immigrants to Florida than they are even to California, which is twice our size. And so if this policy is so great, and you have all these sanctuary states that are always virtue signaling, mostly against Trump from 4 years ago, why not then just redirect there? I can tell you, we're getting money from the legislature because we will be redirecting to Delaware and California and these other sanctuary states. That's going to happen in Florida. But until then, we're in a situation where they continue to do this without providing notification, always under the radar, clandestine, and doing it in a way to try to escape any type of public scrutiny. So I'm really glad that we have a great panel here today. We'll have the Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, then we'll go on the horn, and you guys can speak your piece.
Great. Well, good morning. Thank you, Governor, for being here, and of course to Carmen for hosting us here at the museum. And this exhibit tells the stories of so many, 14,000 Cuban refugee children that made that fight, that their parents made the difficult decision. And while neither of my parents came through Operation Pedro Pan, I would like to share just a brief story of how my parents came to be, ultimately changing the trajectory of their lives and mine as well. My father, 25 at the time, had a cousin that worked at the embassy who continuously told him, get your visa. The United States and Cuba are going to break diplomatic relations. My father, he went to the embassy, he got his visa, he encouraged my mom to do the same. She had just had my oldest sister, and they had their first child. And so my mom procrastinated, as you can imagine, and did not get her visa. And then, of course, the relations were broken. My mom often jokes that because she rarely listened to my father, she would always get into trouble, and this is just another example of how that ended up happening. But what I'll tell you is that they had to make the difficult decision. And so my father came ahead in search of democracy, liberty, and freedom, and left behind his wife and infant child. Very difficult to leave behind your family, not knowing when, but if you'll be reunited. And so for those that are here that experience that as children, I can only imagine the difficult nature of having to not only experience it from your perspective, but also from your parents' perspective. And that's why I feel so strongly, and it's incumbent upon all of us to educate those that would like to, as the governor said, conflate one operation that was fully vetted, organized, legal, with a complete and utter chaos at the border. And what you're seeing, the disastrous policies at the border, they are bringing over 2 million migrants from all over the world, not just Central America, all over the world, that are crossing our borders. And those numbers in December were up almost 179,000. Month over month, those numbers increase. And so the president's reckless policies have incentivized this mass influx, which brings, as the governor mentioned, drug trafficking, human trafficking. And I want to thank our Attorney General for being here. This is an issue that she and I have worked on quite a bit, and her leadership on that issue is extremely important, and we appreciate you being here as well. And so for us, again, I think these acts of human trafficking, human smuggling, drug smuggling, they're plain evil. And for the federal government to shirk its responsibility, ignore the laws that this country was founded upon, I believe very strongly that Florida is leading the way under Governor DeSantis' leadership to push back and to make sure that we protect our citizenry, make sure that we are protecting our children. They like to use children as a pawn in this game, but I can tell you, from our perspective, we are protecting children from this heinous scourge that is human trafficking. And so if I could, Governor, I'd just say a few words in Spanish.
Sure.
Le quiero agradecer al gobernador estar aquí con nosotros y también a Carmen. Esta exposición yo tuve la oportunidad de visitar hace unos meses atrás y de verdad que es impactante. Ver los cuentos de las personas, 14,000 niños que vinieron a este país no sabiendo cuándo o si se iban a reunificar con sus padres. Para mí, yo hice un pequeño momento de informar a las personas qué fue lo que hizo mi papá llegar a este país. Él tenía 25 años, tomó la decisión de recibir su visa. Tenía un primo en la embajada que le había dicho, recibe su visa, voy a buscar su visa, que las relaciones diplomáticas van a parar. Mi mamá no lo pudo recibir a tiempo y él tuvo que tomar la decisión de venir a este país, dejar a su esposa y su bebé, que fue un momento muy difícil para ellos, no sabiendo cuándo se iban a poder reunificar. Pero eso es para muchas personas aquí en nuestra comunidad y en todo el país. Ha sido una historia que todos tenemos muy parecida. Y quiero también agradecerle al gobernador por su política, por su coraje en enfrentar un tema muy importante, porque no es lo mismo una operación como la operación Pedro Pan, con la política desastrosa de Biden en la frontera. Permitir que 2 millones de personas entren a nuestra frontera. En el mes de diciembre, 179,000 personas cuyas no sabemos si son criminales, no sabemos si son menores. Muchos de ellos han dicho que son menores y entonces nos enteramos que tienen 25 años. O sea que esto es algo que nos pone en peligro, que es un riesgo para nuestro Estado, es un riesgo para nuestros niños. Y estoy muy agradecida de estar aquí con el gobernador, porque él se va a enfrentar a este tema, no va a permitir que nuestros niños sean perjudicados, ni que los utilicen en una polémica que la izquierda radical quiere comparar la operación Pedro Pan con lo que es la política desastrosa en la frontera. Y creo que tenemos aquí personas que van a poder hablar de corazón de las diferencias y yo creo que es importante ser honesto en este discurso. Muchas gracias.
Okay, thanks so much. Our Attorney General, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Governor, for your tremendous leadership. Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much. What is important about today is that you have an administration, governor, and others here that are saying, please pay attention to what's going on right now. It's not just being felt here in Miami, it's all over Florida. We are a pro-legal immigration state. In fact, our state is so prosperous and successful because of the folks sitting around this table. Please do not let anyone say otherwise. Florida welcomes legal immigrants who have made this state what it is. But we are anti-trafficking. We are anti-crime. We are anti-chaos. We are anti-cartel. Make no mistake about it. And let no one tell you that what's being done now is similar to what has been done in the past that has made Miami what it is today in terms of immigration. I will go back just one short year. When Biden first got in office, he immediately stopped doing what presidents have historically done in the past, which is follow public safety immigration laws, both Democrat and Republican. They immediately started telling our sheriffs across the state, if there are those here illegally and they're committing crimes, we are not taking them for deportation, release them back into their communities. This administration, we sued. We then started seeing folks being spread all over the nation that had crossed the border illegally, not vetted, being done in secret. The information has not been shared with the administration. We demanded to know who was coming in the state after we saw someone murdered by someone that was brought in, after we saw cops shot at by people that were here illegally. We need to know how the process is taking place, who is being brought in, how is the vetting being done. No answers. We had to sue our own government, the federal government, to get information about their policies and who they are bringing into the state of Florida. Now, they may be sharing information with other states, but they're not sharing that information with Florida. And then we started learning that not only are there open borders, open chaos, anything goes at the southern border, they are building new programs totally outside of federal immigration laws that allow for those who have crossed here illegally to be released, and then the United States government is helping bring over not just children, don't fall for that, up to 21 years old, people that identify as caretakers, you name it. Your taxpayer dollars have now become a travel agency to help them with illegal immigration programs. We don't know who they're bringing here because they're not telling us. So we have repeatedly had to sue our own government because of not just open borders, but because of illegal programs they are building today. The numbers of those folks that they have brought in and released are astronomical. Florida is already feeling the effects. Do not let anyone convey to you that this is just for humanitarian purposes. They are doing this completely in violation of public safety immigration laws. Biden is ignoring every law that has been put in place by Congresses leading up to today. He has ignored historically what both parties have done in office, and he is endangering American lives. We will continue to push back. I am so proud to stand with a governor who is not afraid to speak out. He does not see a news story or take criticism and back away from what needs to be said to protect Floridians. And we won't back down. And Governor DeSantis, thank you so much for bringing folks together.
And thanks to the AG, we worked together and she led the way on suing the Biden administration over their catch and release policies that are in violation of the law. And we've already gotten them to change some of the policies. So what they had been doing is basically giving people a sheet of paper if they come across illegally and they say, hey, here's this 800 number, just call and set up your own procedure or whatever. I mean, can you imagine if that's how laws were enforced? like somebody robs your house, the prosecutor says, hey, just schedule your burglary trial, whatever you want, go ahead. No, of course people aren't going to do that. And there was no sanction for not showing up. Well, so we called them on it, so now they've had to change to where if someone doesn't show up, they've waived any rights and that they are deportable at that instant. And so, so we've already made headway. We're working on doing even more. And so I want to thank her for what she's been doing to really help, really fight for safe communities. And she pointed out, you had this guy that murdered a fella in Jacksonville. This person said they were a, quote, minor. It was a 24-year-old man, comes in illegally, dumped by Biden into Jacksonville, and then he committed this murder. And so that's bringing problems into our state that it shouldn't be there. So I appreciate that very much. Okay, Max Alvarez, just a great member of this community, very, very strong in understanding the dangers of totalitarianism and communism, and the star of the 2020 convention. So go ahead. Make sure the mic is a little closer, yeah.
Well, number one, thank you very much for coming down and meeting with us.
Yep.
We also want to thank you, as well as the Attorney General, for the work that you're doing. And we want to assure you that we're behind you. There was an article in the paper, if I remember, February the 3rd. My age, I get confused with the dates. But anyway, this article tried to tell people that our group was against the policies that you're trying to implement in order to make sure that our people are safe. And naturally, when I read that, I'm a little emotional. The first time I want to do things that I'm not supposed to do, but again, you have to understand. But I was also very sad simply because if you can see in this museum what this country, what the Catholic Charities, what Monsignor was, our spiritual father, did for all of us. When we came over here, we thought it was literally temporary until the communist government of Cuba would be finished. Because as you know, in Central and South America, we change governments like we change hats. So I remember my parents thinking, the kids are going to go out because we want to make sure that we don't lose any school time. So really, I was on my way to Spain. I wasn't even coming over here. It just so happens, and I try not to get emotional, but the same day that I left Cuba, on my way to Spain, through Miami, my brother passed away in Spain. So, kind of sad, but at the same time, how fortunate that I end up in this great country of ours. Now let me assure you, they knew exactly who I was. I had a passport, I had a visa. As a matter of fact, I had a visa to go into the seminary at the Marist Brothers in La Coruña, Spain. They knew who my parents were. And I'm so fortunate to end up in the program that Monsignor Walsh was leading. Later on, we find out that he was responsible for more than 14,000 kids. And, it sounds sad, but at the same time, look how fortunate we were. I, as a kid, didn't really know what was happening until later on. But imagine the courage of mom and dad to send a kid somewhere, and I was very fortunate to stay here because the program, whenever you came here, within days or weeks, sometimes months, you were assigned to a foster home or some other place. But Monsignor kept a home, St. Raphael Hall on Biscayne Boulevard and 21st. And since they didn't know whether I was going to go back to Cuba or going to Spain, they kept me in the program where I stayed for about 4 years until my parents finally came. Now let me tell you what is really sad, that they use this program to try to convince people that this is similar to what is happening today. Not even close. This is the way, and keep using the word socialism, it's communism. This is the way communists work. Remember, the ends justify the means. So they use whatever they can use. They pretend to be whoever they are not. to make sure that they get whatever they want. And here's the problem, because we are a Judeo-Christian society, a Judeo-Christian country. So we not only forgive, but we are the most generous people in the world. We're not allowed to kill, we're not allowed to steal, we're not allowed to lie, then we have to forgive. Communist people don't. If you don't agree with them, they'll kill you. Have no doubt about that. Everybody who's came from any communist country will understand that. So now they're trying to use, illegally by the way, because the Pedro Pan organization is a non-profit organization and we are politically colorblind. We are really keeping the mission that Monsignor Brian Walsh started, which is to take care of children. This is not what is happening right now. What is happening right now is they're using children, some of them, like we did, like we were, as merchandise. That's what it is. And these cartels and these drug people, they're using these kids as merchandise for personal gain. And believe me, when we came directly into the hands of the church, in my case, to the hands of Monsignor Brian Walsh, and we were treated like family. I'll tell you right now, Monsignor Walsh is my dad. So don't dare, ever, compare what is happening now. Because what it's trying to do is to destroy you. Because you are fighting for us. You're fighting for the state. You're fighting for the children that are coming over here unattended. And that's what they're trying to do. So make sure everybody in this group understands that. Maybe the media does not, but everybody here understands that. Okay? And let me assure you, what they're trying to do is destroy this company. This is nothing about Republicans or Democrats. This is about the land. And my father always said it. He knew because he had lost Spain and then he lost Cuba. And he used to tell me, don't lose this place. So thank you, Governor. Thank you for what you're doing. And we're going to die supporting you and anybody who fights to save the only land in the world. Everybody wants to come over here. Nobody wants to leave. Nobody wants to go to California. Everybody wants to come here. What a coincidence. All these people that say if such and such gets elected, I'm going to leave. They haven't left. Nobody in Hollywood left. And I remember listening, oh, if this guy gets elected, we're going to leave. Nobody left. So, again, thank you. By the way, we're so proud, not only of our governor, but we're so very proud of our lieutenant governor. Yes. We're so proud of our attorney general. We are in such great hands in the state of Florida. We have a great Speaker of the House. We have a great and it's a mistake to have me talk first because then I yield my time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And obviously, very powerful as always. And I mean, you do bring up one good point. I mean, irrespective of the recklessness and the illegality and what the cartels are, all that, but just in terms of people coming into Florida, just think of all the blue state refugees we have. I mean, like literally, this is a big deal. You have people coming to Miami. It's a free country. It's not like we can stop that, but you have a lot of people that are fleeing failed state governments in this country. They're fleeing lockdown policies. They're fleeing high crime to be able to come to a law and order state and a state that respects their freedoms. And so, it's when you're leading the country in net in migration, I mean, there are some benefits to that, but there's also challenges that come with that. And I don't think anyone should think otherwise. Okay, Carmen, thanks so much for hosting us, and floor is yours.
Thank you.